Before we start this video, a large thank you to Albert, Alexander, Felix, and Ray for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And as always, an immense thank you to Halo Burner for the continued support of the channel this month on Patreon. It is sincerely and greatly appreciated, my friend, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, we're going to start our item pickup system today, and when it's done, it's going to look like this. So we're going to have an item on the ground, you pick it up, you get a pop-up, and it gets added to your inventory. So I'm going to use this particle from an asset pack I will list on screen now, and it's going to be in the description. It is free. I went and tweaked this one a little bit, and I've kind of made it a lot smaller because it's quite large. So just pick out something that you want to use for now, or take the time and pause the video and create one. But this is going to be essentially be our item pickup effects. So I'm going to scale this one down as well, just a little bit smaller. Make sure the scaling mode is set to hierarchy if you want to scale the particles that way. And I'm just going to position this where I want it to be. That looks good, so it's almost touching the ground. And now I'm going to add a new component that I'm going to call pick up item interactable. So this is going to utilize our interactable system, which is going to do most of the heavy lifting for us. So let's go ahead and add that, create an add, open it up, erase to start and update as is per tradition, drop in our namespace. And then we're going to make this derive from the interactable class. So what do we need here? We're going to really discuss the types of pickups. First, there are two main ones. The first one's world items. So these have an ID and are saved and only spawn once. So you pick it up and it saves the pickup status. And then is monster drops. So these spawn sometimes when creatures die. They have no unique save data. So basically a world item can only be looted one time. And then its status is saved to your character. So you can't just re-loot items in the area over and over again. So let's go to enums and let's make an enum for these item statuses. I'm added some comments here just so it's very clear what all these things do. I'm going to make a comment here for used to determine item pickup type, we'll say. So we can call this public enum item pickup type, or item type for short if you wanted to. Whatever's more clear to you. I'm going to use item pickup type. Item type's kind of a little bit ambiguous. I'm going to say world spawn and enemy spawn. I'm going to call this enemy drop. It's very clear. So world spawn or enemy drop. And actually, I can make that to character drop because it might not necessarily be an enemy that you're killing for the drop. So world spawn and character drop. That's good. Now, there's technically a third one. This is the player item drops, but we're going to handle that a little bit differently. So don't worry about that for now. We will cover that in the future too, though. So let's start by making a public item pickup type. And this is going to be pickup type. So we will need this to be public because it will be need to be referenced later on. We're also going to change this to interactable. Forgot to make it derived from the base class there. So because this is an interactable, we do get the overrides for interact and on trigger enter and exit. So I'm going to make a header here now for world spawn pickup. And this is going to be a set of variables that will only be used if this item is a world spawn specifically. So the first thing we do is have an ID. Each one needs to have a unique ID so that you can save it in your character's save data to know if it's been looted or not. I'm going to use int again because that just is very simple and it's pretty straightforward. You can just number them 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Then a bool status for has been looted. Now I'm just going to make another header called item. I'm going to make a serializable field here. And I'm going to make an item variable. And this is going to be the item that is attached to this pickup, the thing that you pick up and add to your inventory. So next I am going to override our start method, and we want to check when the game starts and this item spawns, if it is a world spawn, if we've already looted it. So what we're going to do is make a function, a private function, and I'm going to call it check if world item was already looted. Alright, so we can call that on start right here. Now let's discuss what we're going to do with this function. So here are some comments. 1, we compare the data of looted items with their item IDs. 2, we check if it's been looted and hide the game object if it has. And if it is not, we make sure the game object is active. So let's go to the character save data and let's actually just make a serializable dictionary here for all these items that we're going to loot in our world. I'm going to make a header for items and I can just copy any of the, I'll call this world items actually so it's a bit more specific. We can copy any of these boss, defeated, or awakened dictionaries here and paste them because it's going to use an int for the ID and a bool for the loot status. I'm going to rename this to world items looted, and I'll change the comment to match, obviously. The int is the item ID. The bool is the loot or looted status. Finally, come down here on character save data, and let's just initialize this as a new serializable dictionary. Okay, cool. Going to save that. Now we can go back to our actual item script compare the data of the looted items ID with this item's ID. So we can say if the world save game manager instance dot current character save data dot world items looted does not contain the key of this specific item ID, we want to add it with the loot status of false, because obviously if it does not contain an item with this ID, it's not been looted already. So we say world save game manager instance current character save data world items looted add item ID false. Now, if it does exist, we're going to set the has been looted status to whatever it is. We reference that by saying world save game manager instance current character data world items looted, and we pass our item ID. Cool. So next we say if it has been looted, hide the object. So if has been looted, game object set active false. And if it hasn't been looted, you can activate the object. Now, if your object is not active by default, you can just do an if-else statement here and activate it like this, and then do else. And then obviously you would come in here and paste that as true. And you put your comments in here like so. But I'm always going to have my object always enabled at start and disabled if it's already been looted. So I'm just going to use the one here like so. So I'll just move mine back out here and put my comment above like this. And then we're good to go. All right, cool. So what's next? We're checking to see if it's been looted, and if it is, we're hiding it. So you could do a switch statement and start, and then reference all the item pickup types like this, and then put this one under world spawn. But since we're only having special logic at the moment for world spawn, I'm just going to say if our item pickup type is equal to item pickup type world spawn, then we're going to check to see if it was already looted. Whoops, that's pickup type, not item pickup type. There we go. So this works just as good, and it's a bit shorter too. All right, cool. So we have a way to know if our item has been looted. That's great. What's next? Well, we can make another line of code here. We'll call it 0 because world items in Elden Ring and in Dark Souls, they can't be seen by cooperative players. So if the player isn't the host, hide this item, regardless. We're not even checking the save data. We're just going to get rid of it. So we can do that by saying if network manager singleton, I think we have to use using unity.netcode. I don't think we have it referenced yet. Yeah, so let's go up here and use the netcode library by saying using unity.netcode. And then we're going to reference our network manager, which is always present if we're connected to somebody, .singleton.isHost. So if it's not the host, what we want to do is just set this game object to inactive and then simply return. Okay, cool, looks good. And we are done with that function. All right, so what's next? Well, we have to handle the interact portion of the function now. And what's this going to do? This is going to handle actually picking up the item, destroying the object, or hiding it, placing it in inventory, and sending us a pop-up. And we'll play a sound effect as well. So I'm just going to say 1, play a sound effect. And then right below that, I'm going to say 2, add the item to inventory. And then 3, display a UI pop-up. And then we're going to say showing the item. We can say name and picture. And that's really it. It always helps to just line out what you want to do, I find. It's a good practice for sure. So let's jump over through the world sound effect manager now, and let's make an audio clip under action sounds, and we'll call this pick up item sound effects. And we're just going to simply play that when we pick up the item, and we can just play that from the player. If you prefer to, you can make an audio source on this, but if you're destroying the item shortly after or hiding it, that might stop the audio. So I'm just going to go to player.player or character sound effect manager, and we're going to use our play sound effect function, and then we're just going to drop in that sound effect. So it's going to be player.character sound effect manager, play sound effects, and then we're going to open up the brackets and say world sound effect manager.instance, and we're going to reference our pickup item sound effect. I'm going to leave all the other values at their default. Cool, so adding the item to the inventory. This one's pretty straightforward as well. Let's go to the player inventory manager script, and we're going to make a new header here for items in inventory. You can say inventory if you want, it doesn't matter. And we're going to make a list of items. So let's make a public list in case you want to reference it to compare some stuff, which we will do later on in the UI. So we're going to say items in inventory, and you could just add and remove things from a list right now, saying, dot referencing the list and dot add, but let's jump back and add 2 more functions, public void add item to inventory and public void remove item from inventory. Now, why is this? Because we're going to do some things in between when we add the items to our inventory, other than just adding to a list in the future. So for now, these are going to be made here with not much logic happening. I will make a comment here though. To do, create an RPC here that spawns the item on the network when you drop it so other players can see it. And in add item to inventory, we're just going to say items in inventory.add, and then we'll make this require an item, and we'll add that item. Cool. All right, that's it. Save. Now let's go back to our pickup item interactable. We're going to say player.player inventory manager add item to inventory, and we pass item. And item, if you don't remember, is the variable we made up here. It is the item that is attached to this pickup drop. Cool. All right, the last part is display a UI pop-up showing the item's name and picture. So we could add for as well, save loot status. So if it's a world spawn and it's already been looted, cool. We want to save it so we can't loot it again. So if we want to do that, we're going to say if pickup type is equal to item pickup type dot world spawn. We want to say if world save game manager dot instance dot current character save data dot world items looted contains a key. With this, we want to remove it and then re-add it with the status of true. So we're going to say world save game manager instance dot current character data dot world items. We pass our ID and we say remove with that past ID, and then we just re-add it and change this false to true, and that's it. Cool. Now, optionally too, down here as well, can make a comment. 5, hide or destroy the game object. So I say optionally because you could do either. You should do one of them at least. I'm going to destroy mine. You can just disable the game object if you prefer, but I'm going to destroy it. So let's do the UI portion now. Let's go over to our player UI manager. We're going to go to the pop-up manager, and let's open that up. So let's make all the variables we need first, and then we can start making some UI elements. I'm going to make a header for item pop-up because this is going to behave a bit differently, and it's going to kind of be its own thing. So what do we want in this item pop-up? We want the game object itself that we can hide or toggle on when we have one. So item pop-up game object. We want an image. I need to be saying using Unity engine.ui up here. So let's use the UI library so we can use the image variable. So using Unity engine.ui. And this is going to be the item icon. And we want a couple more things. We want the item name. So text mesh pro, UGUI, item name. And if you want to, optionally too, you want the item amount. This is especially useful obviously for consumables. Or you can just have it displayed all the time regardless. So we have all of our variables. Let's write the functionality and then let's make the UI. I'm going to drop in this function right below send player message pop-up. I'm going to call this send item pop-up, make it a public void so we can call it from anywhere. I'm going to make this require an item and an integer for the item amount. Now, if you're having an item amount on your base item class, you don't need this. But if you're only having item amounts on your consumables, you can just have this other variable and pass that if you do a cast or whatever. There's a million ways to do this. This is just how I choose to do it. So we're going to say item amount.enabled is equal to false by default. If you don't want it enabled, if you only have a singular object, it's up to you. Item icon.sprite is equal to item.item icon. And then we're going to say item name.text is equal to item name. So item.item name. And then your item amount. So you could say if amount is, say, greater than 0 or 1. You might not even have an amount there if it's just a regular item. There's a million ways to do this, but you can just not enable that. I'm going to keep mine defaultly enabled all the time, but you would say item amount.enable is equal to true. Item amount.text is equal to x plus the amount to string. And then you want to enable the item pop-up game object. So then you also want to let the player UI manager know that a pop-up window is open because we close all pop-up windows when we hit the interact button. Or at least we're going to. That's going to be the plan. So back over here on interact, what we would do is call this by saying player UI manager.instance.popup manager.send item popup. And then we pass our item. And right now we don't have consumables, so we're just going to say 1. And I am going to edit that code right now so that it's always going to basically show the amounts. So I'm going to jump back over to the send item pop. That should be 1, my bad. Jump back over to the send item pop-up. And I'm just going to say right here, it's already greater than 0, so this will show up by default. You could say if it's greater than 1. So again, if you had just one singular item, it will never show the times 5, times 3, times 2, times 1 text. It'll just give you the item. But I'm going to make it always display it. So pop-up organizer. I'm going to make a new game object. Going to size it to the same size as the canvas. Going to put a vertical layout group on it. I'm going to set it to, I think it's supposed to be lower center, and spacing is going to be, we'll have to see actually. So let me drag in my message pop-up here in a sec. So why am I doing this? Well, first drag your message pop-up. What happens if you get a message pop-up, like a temporary message pop-up at the same time that item loops? You don't want them to be overlapping each other, look kind of ugly. So you want this vertical layout group to take over and kind of stack them. If two happen to pop up at the same time, that shouldn't happen very often, but just in case. So I'm going to set it to middle center from the bottom, and just set the values up how you want. I have spacing 25 and 150 from the bottom. I like having it look like it's lined up with my my UI elements in the bottom left there, just a little bit if possible. So now I'm going to make an item pop-up window here, and I'm going to set my width as something that is appropriate. So I'm going to say 900 and whatever times, I don't know, maybe 300. I should just look at Nephilim and see that's a pretty good size. Yeah, I'm going to roughly use the same numbers as Nephilim, but just play around with it. It's going to be different depending on how you want your UI to look and what size everything else is in respect to this, etc. Now I could spend the time and get the color to look similar, or I could just copy the image component of our quick slots and paste that in the image component here. Make sure to untick raycast target, by the way, otherwise you're wasting memory. And I'm just going to make this the same size as the item pop-up parent object, but then I'm going to dial it in a little bit. Why am I doing this? Because there is a little space in the bottom I want for text that will say like press Y to continue or OK, press Y. Basically, it's going to be the control that tells you what button to press to close this menu. So I want a little bit of space for that. So then I'm going to duplicate the item background whenever I think I have it appropriately set. I don't know what to call this. I guess I could call it control message or press whatever to continue, confirmation controls, whatever you think fits this the best. But this is going to be that small little box below that says press the Y button to close this message. I'm going to add a vertical layout group to that. I'll say middle center, no spacing, and then I'm going to force expand it a little bit. So I'm going to make this 50 in the height, we'll say. And yeah, now I will force expand the height, so it should pop it. There we go, looks good, cool. All right, what's next? Well, we have our two backgrounds, and we have them sorted here by a vertical layout group. I'm going to try to align this a little bit to this little corner here, and I'm not going to spend very long on it because I could go into a whole deep dive about UI and how it should be aligned, things to help it look good, but we'll keep it moving just to get the functionality there first. So I'm going to add a text here. This is not really anything except style. I'm just adding an underlined text so we can kind of have our title look like it has an underline to it of whatever the item's name is. I'm going to center it. I'm going to just play around with the size here until it gets to a place that's looking nice. And I only have one font, I think, in this project, so it is what it is. I will use a different color, darken up a little bit. Now I'm going to duplicate this, and this will be our actual item name text. So I'll rename this to item name text. Cool. I'm just going to put an empty name here for now, so we'll say an item, just so we can see what it's going to look like. And yeah, these fonts are not different, so that's okay. All right, cool. So I am going to move that a little bit. Make sure it's anchored to the top as well. Anchors are very important to be setting up on your elements. It will help things kind of stay as where they should be if there's scaling happening. All right, cool. That looks fine. Now we need to do the item icon. So UI, image, again, on-tick, raycast target. You're not going to click this at any point. It would just waste some memory. And make sure this stays the default color. There you go. Going to change this to item icon. Now, of course, if you feel like spending some time on this and making it look pretty, by all means, pause the video and go ahead and do that. You're probably going to revisit it a bunch of times if you're just prototyping a UI. I revisited Nephilim's like at least a dozen, probably more. So under the confirmation controls background, I'm going to add a text. I'm going to center it, fill it out to the size of this. I'm just going to say OK. I'm going to copy the color of our other text and paste that there so it's consistent. This is way too large. I'm going to shrink it down to say 24. Cool. That's fine. And I'm going to drop this title text down a little bit to maybe 30 or 32. Yeah, that's fine. All right, cool. That will do for now. So I will drag in all my variables, item, pickup, game object, that's as in the master game object that hides it all, drag in our icon, and then drag in our two text fields. Oh, I forgot the item amount, so we'll do that now too. So I'm going to duplicate this. I just changed this, by the way, to press control to continue text. So you can change the control, whatever, Y, X, A, whatever. So I'm going to duplicate this item name thing here. I'm going to call it item amount. I'm going to change it so it's inside right here. And I'm going to make it so the text always favors the far right side because that's where it is on our screen. And I'm going to make it parent the bottom right of this object. And there's a little test ×1. Cool, looks good. And I'm going to drag the variable in here, and now we can save. Let's not forget to close the item pop-up game object by hiding it, and we're good to go. Okay, let's set the interactable to an interactable layer. That's very important. And let's add an interactable collider so we can actually pick it up. And let's add some interactable text. For me, it's just going to say pick up item. Honestly, you can say pick up too if you want. Then use the sphere collider, hit the gizmos button so I can see how much the radius is out. I'm going to make mine 1.12. That seems fine. I'm going to drop in that collider. Going to add the sphere to it as an item. And the ID is fine at 0 because we don't have any items. This will be our first. It will be a world spawn. So item pickup interactable. Let's save that as a prefab under the interactable objects folder. And let's go back into our player UI pop-up manager, close all pop-up windows, make sure you add our new item pop-up.gameObject set active to false to that. There we go. Now, we also need a way to close this out ourselves when we just press the interact button. Don't forget to make this collider a trigger, by the way, I forgot to do that. So go to the player interaction manager, and right where you have the interact function, this always gets called when you press the interact button. So right above where we're checking for interactable objects, we can simply say player UI manager.instance, player UI pop-up manager.close all pop-up windows. So all this is going to do is if you're pressing interact button before you interact with an object, or if you don't have interactable, it'll just simply close out the current pop-up, which is what you want. So if you press the interact button with or without an interaction or interactable, it will clear the pop-up windows. So this is our item pickup or messages, or it says you opened the door, for example, you pulled the lever, all that stuff, or whatever pops up. There we go. Now, if I go in the game here now and I go over to this item and pick it up, boom, there we go. You've interacted. There it is. We could play an animation too, so we should add that in eventually, which we will do. Let's go over to the World Save Game Manager. I'm going to save the game and jump right back and make sure that doesn't respawn. So be right back. All right, we're loading into the game, and the item does not spawn. So there you go, working as intended. Now, I have one final thing for you to do. You'll see that if I go to my inventory here, it's actually not been saved in my inventory. So you have the logic to do this now. What I want you to try to do is to go over to your character save data and figure out a way to save all the items in your inventory. There you go. So you can see it's not in my inventory right now. There it is. All right, guys. I will show you how to do that the next time we come back to the items and we expand this further. So we're going to continue going back and forth with a couple more key mechanics, but also jumping back to some inventory stuff like this in the future. But I still want to do a couple more things too, like reposting, backstabbing, guard breaking, and I guess you'd call it stance breaking for AI. So we're probably going to rotate between inventory videos and some more mechanic videos like that. So as always, thank you very much for joining me here again this weekend. I hope you all have a lovely weekend. And as always, a genuine thank you to my Patreon supporters. It is because of each and every one of you I get to keep doing this. So you have my sincerest gratitude. I will see you guys in the next one.